All right. So last lab, what we did is we UV'd our model, such as it were, like this, right? So we have this UV'd, which basically means that we took this and we laid it out flat. So now it's possible to put a 2D image onto this 3D model. So what we need to do basically is texture it, is what we call it. So we're going to create the texture maps. So there's three primary ones we need to create. We need to do a color, a specular, and a bump map. Okay. Now you can do this in any number of programs. We're going to use Mudbox. The reason for that is because I usually do it in Photoshop, and I know you guys are supposed to have Photoshop readily available, but I know that you've already made your Mudbox account or your Autodesk account, so you can just use Mudbox. So what that means is that you're going to want to go to autodesk.com like you did before to download Maya. Just go to menu, go to students and educators, go to get products, and then you're going to have to, I'm already logged in, but you're going to have to log in. It might ask you to. It might start doing it here and then log in. But what I want you to do is scroll down until you see Mudbox. Then do get product, and you're going to want to install. Okay? So you're going to need to do this right off the bat. This is basically it's a 3D digital sculpting and painting software. Okay? So we're just going to do painting it. We're not going to do any sculpting, but that's one of the things that it does. So we're going to be using that program in order to do the coloring. Okay, so it's possible to do other programs and stuff, but for this, I'm just going to go ahead and use this. All right, good. So just make sure you go ahead and do that, and then let's go back here. So I need to take this model and push it out to Mudbox. I've already downloaded and installed it. I did just for this video. It was a relatively painless experience. So yeah, I need to export this out. So Mudbox does not take MB files. It will take a couple different files. What we're going to do is we're going to export out an OBJ. So if you remember, that's how we brought the head in before. We exported out an OBJ and brought that in. Just in case your Maya is weird, just remember that you cannot import or export OBJs unless the plugin's on. So just go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, Plugin Manager. And if you scroll, it's alphabetical. Scroll down until you get to the O's. And then just make sure OBJ export is loaded in auto load. Okay. All right, so I'm going to select it. I'm going to go File, Export Selection, and then set up. I didn't set up my Maya project folder, so don't tell anybody. Naughty me. So I'm just going to make sure this goes to the right spot. So make sure that you're exporting out. Just export out to your Scenes folder. Is this not? There it is. It's like not alphabetical or any kind of. Okay, so anyway, we're going to export selection, and then I want to export out, scroll all the way down, and you'll see OBJ export. That's what we want to export out in. And I'm going to turn all these settings off, okay? Just to keep it cleaner. And then we're just going to say model to Mudbox. That way I know, actually, usually I do Maya to Mudbox. That way I know I'm going from Maya to Mudbox, and that's what this file is. And then I'll hit export selection. Okay, so that should have exported. Now what I'm going to do is just open up Mudbox. All right, so I'm watching this dog, and he's terrible. All right, hang on one second. I got to go yell at that dog. Hey, Ayla, Katie, stop it. All right, that should do it. Okay, so this is the first time opening it up, so you probably will have a similar experience. So just go single user. Hopefully it will do whatever. Okay, so you're gonna get this right off the bat. All this is fine except for right here. See, it says set my mouse and keyboard interaction to Mudbox. Switch that to Maya. So the nice thing is, much like how when you use one, and I'm gonna hit OK, much like how you use an Adobe product, that they all kind of work the same. Whether you work in Photoshop or Illustrator or wherever, you know, the hotkeys are kind of similar. The things they work well together. Well, since these are both Autodesk products, you kind of have a similar story, which is nice. I'll hit OK. And then you're just going to hit open. Okay. If for some reason you hit close, just go file open. You can do it over there. But I'm just going to hit open, and I'm going to go look for that file that I just exported, the OBJ. Maya to Mudbox, open, and here it is. Okay. Now again, the navigation stuff should all be the same as in Maya, but if for some reason you clicked it and like, oh no, I didn't do that, it's set to Mudbox. Just go to Windows, Hotkeys, and you can switch it right here, okay? And also you can see all the hotkeys. So if you're wondering what the hotkeys were, here they are. So that's actually a nice feature. I think there is something like this in Maya, but I've never really explored it, and I don't think it's as straightforward. Like that's a nice, clean way of doing it. So yeah, so here we have Mudbox. Basically, navigation should work the same as Maya. I'm just going to go ahead and go to display, and I am going to turn off the grid because I don't feel like we need the grid in the background. These all do the things that you would expect to see them from up here. I'm not going to go through and like tell you what all this stuff is because we're only going to be using a small portion of this. So if you remember, I said it does sculpting and it does painting. Okay. So by default, right now, you can't really tell what mode we're not really in a mode, but what you're doing. You can see we're on Sculpt Tools. So just go ahead and click on Paint Tools, and then click on the Paint tool here. Okay. Also, if you're over here, click on Paint. Okay. So you want to be on Paint here, and you want to be on Paint here, and just go ahead and click on the Paint tool too. Okay. That should actually automatically switch it over here as well, but just to make sure that everything's hunky-dory. So we want to be on Paint. And we want Paint Tools, okay? So those are the two main things. It can do a couple of other little things, but basically that's pretty much what it does are those two things. All right. That being said, so we got those down. We need to paint 3 maps. We need to do a color map, a specular map, which is shininess, and then a bump map, which is like texture, like bumpiness, okay, like the name suggests. All right. Okay, so we got this. That's all looking fine and dandy. The basic tool is the paintbrush. What I need to do first is this works just like the main reason I like this program is that it's decently powerful, but quite honestly, there are programs that do it better, like ZBrush or even 3D Co or other programs. The reason why I like this one is because it's so much like Maya and it's so industry standard. It's very kind of simple, and if you know Maya and you know Photoshop, then most of this you should be comfortable with it. Okay, so. I'm in my paint. I'm just going to go ahead and add a new layer. So this uses layers, and I'm just going to call this main. These are going to be my main colors. So we're going to do main colors. And the size of the maps I want to be are going to be 2048. Save as. I like PNGs personally. So just do PNGs. And then the channel is going to be, oh my God. Hang on a second. Hey, JD. Ava, we did it. We did it. Stop. Seriously. So it's not my dog. I'm watching my brother-in-law's dog, and she's just terrible. I have 3 dogs in the house, and I always have 2. You never hear them. It's that one's just not a good dog. Anyway, so PNG, and then if you look on this, these are the different channels that you can paint. Okay, so we have diffuse, specular, gloss, incandescence, blah blah blah. Okay, now you'd be like, there's no color. That's because diffuse is color. I know in Maya there's color and diffuse. I don't know if you've looked into the materials, but diffuse is technically the stuff that when the light hits it, it's what refracts the light outwards in different directions, and so you see color. Okay. So anyway, we're gonna go with that one. I'm gonna hit OK, and I'm gonna pause this real quick and go beat that dog up. Oh my God, it's still barking. I put it in the crate in hopes. All right. So hopefully, let's see how this does. All right, so we made this layer. And so basically you can have layers just like you do inside of Photoshop, right? So, I removed the other dog and it's still barking at nothing. It's really frustrating. So anyway, I can add more layers. So we can do another one, just hit OK. And then you can, put one on top of the other. You can, just like you normally would. So they work exactly the same way. You have over here, you actually have opacity, just like you normally would. They call it strength, but it's opacity. You can have masks, and you can even have layer blending modes, like multiply and all the ones that you would normally see, right? So it's pretty cool. I can delete the layers, put them in folders, blah, 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 all right? So very similar if you're used to Photoshop and that sort of thing. That's basically how it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the main colors. I'm just going to do solid colors on this main color block, okay? So I got my paintbrush over here, and then basically the settings are what shows up over here. Okay, so if I scroll through, you can see the settings of the paintbrush. So whatever tool I have over here gets showed over here, okay? So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to give him a red shirt. So I'm going to go here and do something like maybe a little bit more towards the orange. Okay, so we'll say red, hit okay. That's good. I'm also going to put mirroring on X. That way when I paint on one side, paint's on the other. Makes sense? All right, the rest of that should be good. Let's see. Yeah, we'll call that good. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit here. Now, to control the brush, you can do it over here with these little sliders, and that would change the brush size and strength. But the hotkeys are the same that it would be inside of Maya. We haven't really used, I think, any of the brushes in Maya because they haven't really been super useful. But basically, it's B for brush. That's the size. And then M, like magnitude, for the strength. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure that this is 100. And only because I'm just trying to paint a solid color, I don't need transparency. Now, if you have a tablet, this is pressure sensitive and all that, so that's even better. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to brush on this, and you can see you can paint on it, right? And we're just painting directly onto it. Now, one of the things you might notice is it's kind of hard to get like a good line here, right? And also, I'm having a hard time getting in here. So one of the things you can do, which is a neat little thing again with this program, is that I can actually flatten this to the UVs that we made. And that's going to actually make it easier to paint these primary colors rather than trying to actually paint the color on top of this, because the edges are going to be a little bit more difficult to work with. So to do that, you go to UVs and we go flatten to UV space. And now it's going to show the UVs flattened. And so what I'm going to do now is this. I'm going to turn the mirroring off, because what you're going to see is that, see how I paint, I don't know if you can see it's mirroring it across, which is not going to be helpful. So I'm going to turn that off while I'm in here. And I'm just going to paint this red, because this must be the sleeve, and this is another sleeve, and this is obviously the shirt. Right, so I'm just going to try and do my best. Alt, middle, mouse button. So it's the same keys as in Maya, so Alt, middle, and left. So I think that's all the shirt pieces. So then I guess this is skin. So I'm just going to do some sort of skin color, whatever you want. It's supposed to be like my son, so it's got to be basically white. My son is like Casper the Ghost. He is the most pale boy you've ever met. So, okay, so we're just going to kind of paint all this in here. I'm not sure what this one is. What is that one, I wonder? I don't know. This is definitely his head. So I'm just going to paint all of this, all these colors onto, that must be, I'm assuming this must be the arm. Oh, no, wait, this is the arm. I'm not sure what that is. I'll do that one last, and then if we need it, we can use it. Okay, so, and then I'm just going to give him like blue jean pants, kind of, just doing super generic-y kind of thing. That looks fine. Okay. And that would be right here. Here's his shorts. Well, you know what? I think that is skin, because those are his legs. So I'm just going to do both sides of the shorts here. That looks acceptable. I'm going to eyedrop. Where's the eyedropper? And select that color, and then paint that skin color as well. This one and this guy. All right. And then he's, oh, I didn't do forgot his other hand here. Okay, and then what else do I have left? Just his shoes, I guess? Okay, so then what color are his shoes? I don't even know. I think they're red, to be honest, but so I'm not going to do that. We'll just do this kind of dark blue color. Works for me. Okay, so I'm just going to paint this like that. And did I paint that? I can't even tell. I don't think I did. Yada, yada, yada. So there's the other shoe. There's another part of the shoe. All right, and then I'm just going to, again, do the eyedropper to this color, because I don't know. Maybe I did paint it. Okay. I think I got everything. So now when you're done with that, I'm just going to go to UVs and maps, and I'm going to unflatten from UV space. And then you're going to see the whole thing is basically painted, which is pretty cool. So, all right. Let's go ahead and put mirroring back on X. And we should be good to go. All right, so we'll call that primary colors. So he's got all of his colors on him. That's acceptable. I just want to do something real quick. Make sure we're okay. Good. So I'm just gonna. I went to the objects list and just kind of clicked off because it was graying it out. I'm not sure what the reason is for that, but okay. So now I have these main colors on there, right? So now what I might want to do is paint like some details. So maybe we'll have something on his shirt. Okay, so maybe, I don't know, let's say Spider-Man, because he likes Spider-Man, so we'll make him a Spider-Man shirt, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and make another layer, and we'll just call this like secondary colors, okay? All right, and then on this one, I can use this paintbrush. There's also a pencil, and the pencil basically does what the pencil does inside. You can also use the bracket keys, by the way, in order to change the brush size. Um, the pencil does the same thing it does inside Photoshop, where when you use it, um, it's basically just like a harder line. Okay, so or I can just honestly use the brush, and then right now we were using kind of the generic. That's what the brush looks like kind of thing. But if you go to fall off, these are kind of the tips. So watch, if I go like this, it's going to be very in the center. It's going to be perfect color, and then it's going to fade out really quick. Oops, let me make sure I grab black so that it's a little more obvious. And then let's make this a little bit smaller. So you see in the center, and then it fades out. See how, like, if you look to the outside, there's not a lot of it? That's because if you look, that's how the fall off is. So it'd be a lot of black here, and then it fades out real quick. But watch when I do this. It's just going to be solid black all the way to the outside edges. Okay, so these are the fall offs. So this might be helpful to you. I'm going to do, I guess, this one. I don't know. Yeah, we'll do that one. Okay, so I'm just going to go B, make this a little bit smaller, and I'm just going to basically draw Spider-Man on this. I'm just gonna do the head of Spider-Man. So obviously I'm doing this with a mouse, by the way, too, because I'm using my laptop, and so don't judge me. It's got a bit of a cone head there, so we'll just go like this. Great. Then I'm just gonna, it's not very web-like, but you get the idea. Okay, so I put that on there, and then maybe I want to give him some shoelaces, so I'll change this color to like white, right? And then we can just kind of, let's make the brush a little bit bigger, and I'll just draw these really crappy shoelaces, because that's what his look like. He doesn't know how to tie his shoes. Just put some, look at that, that's great. Okay. Maybe draw some eyebrows for him since he's eyebrowless. So let's go like this. Actually, he's blonde, so we're going to do more of a dark, that kind of tan color. So I'm going to draw some eyebrows like that. Good. All right, so you know, and you can do other things too. So maybe I'll eye drop this, and then I'm just gonna make this a little bit of a darker color and draw, like, you know, the pocket lines here, kind of a thing. And then maybe, like, you know, usually there's like a zipper line thing. Yeah, so you get kind of the idea. Next, what I might do is just do, I'm gonna do another one of these, and we'll just call this, we'll call it variation. Okay, and in this one, what I'm gonna do is, I'm going to try to do some painting on him. So I'm going to do what we call like pre-shading. So I'm gonna go dark all the way. I'm gonna go to black, and then I'm going to use this dry brush. Okay, so this might be fun for you. You go to dry brush, and then what you do is, if you hold B to make it a little bit bigger. What dry brush does is kind of what you can kind of tell by the illustration. So the idea is, if you had a brush with paint on it and it didn't have a lot of paint, but you go over like a surface, if you brushed across the surface, like let's say with my hands, it would catch the tops of my hand here, but the crevices wouldn't get any of the paint because there's not enough paint to like seep into it. Okay. Now, you can do the opposite. So there's another thing called patina. So they used to do this with vases. I don't know. But basically, if there's a relief on the vase, what they would do is they would put this oily substance, oil like paint, and they would rub it all over it into the cracks and everything. And then afterwards, when they were done, they'd rub it off. Well, when they wiped off that grease, that dark color, it would stay in the crevices. And so what it does, it kind of like, it would make the relief stand out more, because basically where there would be shadow from being an inside piece is even more in shadow because now it's got that dark paint in it. So the reason why I'm making that a point is that, let's say I grab, let's do a white actually. Hang on one second. Now when I go to brush this, what's going to happen is, I don't know if it's going to be readily apparent. it's going to catch things that stand out. So basically the parts that are pointed. Let me see if it'll work on here, if it'll be more obvious. Let me see, where's my strength? It's all the way up. Let's try black, because maybe it'll make it more obvious. So if I brush black on here, you're going to see that it's going to catch on his cheeks and his forehead and on his chin and like on the tips of his ear, but not behind the ear, okay? So what I'm going to do is actually leave it on black. And what I want to do is this. If you hold control, it does the opposite, which means it will paint black into the crevices. You see what I'm saying? So you can do something like that, and then that kind of adds almost a patina. Now, obviously, that's a little bit too strong. I just wanted to show you that tool because I think it's a cool tool. It's really good for trying to get texture into it, but that isn't going to help us necessarily with our guy right now. So I'd rather not use this. I usually just go ahead and they also have dodge and burn. So if you want to burn, you can burn it instead. I usually just grab the paintbrush. I'll do like, I'm going to sample the color there, and I'm going to do like a darker version of it like this. And then I am just manually, I'm going to hold B, and then I'm going to take the strength down a bunch to like, I don't know, 30%. Oh, that's still needs to be more than that apparently. So let's go even less. Let's go like 5%. Let's see. Yeah, so I'll do 5%, and then I'm just going to kind of paint a little bit darker in here. I'm going to paint a little bit darker under his nose because there'd be like a little bit of a shadow there. I'm going to paint a little bit darker inside of his ear because there would be a little bit darker in there. Paint a little bit darker behind his ear. Underneath his chin, it'd be a little bit darker, right? Because it'd be kind of a shadow cast there. Inside the crevice of his lips. So I'm just going to paint that a little bit darker in here. Okay. Maybe around the crease of his nose. All right, maybe around the eyelid right there, underneath his brow. So that way it will kind of help push the geometry, like just visually. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to make kind of a deeper kind of reddish orange like this, okay? And I'm going to leave this really low. I might even go lower. Let's try like 2.5 for strength. And what we're going to do with this is that basically like your nose will have redness in it, your cheeks will, your fingertips, things like that will have a little bit of redness, and it'll make it feel more alive. Let's put a little bit on his forehead, obviously his lips, his cheeks, give him a little bit of rosiness there. It's a little bit smaller. His ears will have a little bit of redness in them. Okay. I'm just going to add basically variation. Elbows, it's like it's a little bit bigger. Elbows would have some. His fingertips would have some. I'm obviously doing this very quickly and not a good job. Normally I would spend quite a bit of time doing this, but things like that. Okay. So, and then I would just, I could actually kind of do the same thing I was doing earlier. So let's say we do this and I'll do a really dark red. And then I'm just going to paint his armpits. Maybe make this a little bit stronger again. Let's do like 7. Painting his armpits a little bit darker, right? His armpits would be a little bit darker. Maybe add just a little bit here. I could even try to like just bake kind of a little bit of, wrinkling kind of a thing. All right. And then you could do the opposite as well. So I could take it and then do like a lighter version of it. And then just add like a little bit on the top. Okay. It's just by breaking up the color, even if you do a bad job, even if you're just splotching it all over the place, it looks better than it being one solid color. And that's more or less, so I'm going to eyedrop, let's see, this. And that's more or less what you're looking for. Just try to make it look a little bit better. So obviously blue jeans, usually they're a little bit more worn on this and on the buttocks, right? And then I'm just going to go ahead and make it a little bit darker. Like that on the inside of his legs. All right. And then maybe we can even just to kind of help this a little bit, let's put a little bit more right there to help that blend in. And then we'll just kind of help the that situation. So we'll just kind of draw lines like they're wrinkles almost. Real subtle, obviously. All right. So we're just going to kind of, you can play around with it. Normally I would spend a lot more time on this, but I just want you to see the different things. Okay. So I'd go through and I would do a lot better job, and I would do all sorts of stuff with that. So that would be the color. Okay. So we're going to call that good for diffuse. So yeah, it works. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a new layer. Click on new layer. And this time, instead of diffuse, we're going to do specular. Okay, and we'll just, I don't know, call this specular. Doesn't really matter because we're only going to do one of these. It's not really that big of a deal. So what specular does is it basically paints the shininess, okay? But it's based on light to dark, which means white to black. So I'm just going to go ahead and make this absolutely white so you can see. Don't do this. I'm just showing you. And I'll make sure my strength is all the way up. Now watch. You'll see his head now. It's super shiny, okay? All right, now I'm going to undo that. Now watch if I paint it 100% black. It's going to make it not shiny at all, okay? So certain elements are shiny, some aren't, right? So if you think like a rug, it's not shiny at all. But if you look at like a ceramic floor, it's shiny. A glass is shiny, right? But a chalkboard is not shiny, okay? Well, not really. So basically, some things are matte and some things are not, and that's the idea, okay? So now, it can be kind of hard to tell what you're doing, so you could paint it just like this, just as the way we are. One of the things I like to do is I right-click on this, and I go solo as diffuse, which means show it as color. And you can see right now, none of it has color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just generally going to paint, I'm going to say almost black. Actually, we'll just paint black on all of it to start with. And then I'll add a little bit of color to other areas, right? So basically, the clothes would all be black because they're not shiny. I mean, his shoes could potentially be shiny, but I don't think so. All right, so we'll call that good. Now what I'm going to do is paint his skin, and really, skin has a little bit of shine to it, but not a lot. So I'm just going to do a little bit, and I'm just going to paint his skin this dark gray. And you could go into the whatchamacallit, you could flatten the UVs like we did before to make this perfect. But to be rather honest, I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's going to be kind of subtle anyway, so I'm just painting this like so. That should, gotta go up a little bit more. All right, so that, and then his face. Now, in reality, there's a lot more subtlety than what we're doing here. I'm just kind of quickly brushing this along. All right, so for instance, usually like, the nose would be a little bit shinier and around the eyes, and obviously the lips would also be, let's not do it quite like that. Let's see if I can just, oops, that was weird. Just want to, the lips would be a little bit of shininess too, right? So that looks terrible, but I think you get the idea. So then when you're done doing that, so that's roughly what happens. So obviously like your fingertip might be, like your fingernails obviously are shiny. So you paint the shininess. So what's black will be not shiny, and what's white will be. So for the most part, it should be black and like really, really dark gray. Even this is probably too light, to be rather honest. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is right-click over top of it and unsolo. So now you can see the shirt, right? It's completely matte, but see how there's a little bit of shine on the skin? And that kind of helps separate the material. So you can see that specular highlight, but it doesn't go into the shirt or the clothes. So that basically helps separate the two. So now we've done a specular. Now the last one to do is going to be the bump map. Okay, so we're going to go on this, and then you're going to choose this, and then you're going to go bump map, and just type in textures. Okay, so what a bump map does is what the name suggests. It makes things bumpy or not bumpy. So far, we haven't really done too much with these other tools. And again, this is something where if you want to play around with it, go ahead and do it. This should be pretty self-explanatory. If you know Photoshop, and I think it's not required anymore before this class, but most students have taken Photoshop before this. These tools should be somewhat familiar, okay? Anywho, I showed you fall off. Don't mess with material presets, please, because that's just going to change the material and it's going to make it not work. Also, don't mess with lighting, and camera bookmarks are pointless. So I showed you fall off, but what I didn't show you was this. So there's stencil and then there's stamp, okay? So stamp kind of works like brush tips in Photoshop, where basically if you select it, when you go to brush on it, it stamps that, it'll stamp it one after the other. You can't really, like if I go like, there we go. It basically drags that image across, okay? So, and there's all sorts of different ones like so. All right, now this is a bump map. So let me see if I can find something that's a little bit, I'm just gonna make this a little bit bigger. Let's just do one big stamp so you see it. There we go. So basically what it does, you've probably seen this in video games. In video games they use normal maps, but they're the same thing as bump maps. They probably use bump maps too, but not as much. Basically, it makes it look like it's 3D. See how it's like reacting to the light? But if you look at it from the side, you can see it's not actually affecting the geometry. Basically, it's a black and white image that's laid over top of the model that uses its normals and will fake the micro tiny details on the model. All right. So for our intents and purposes, we're going to use this bump map. There's other ways of doing it too, but we're going to use this one. All right. Now, it is possible, and you see this little thing here? It is possible to go online and to grab and add your own stamp. So I want to do jeans, let's say, right? So jeans should have a texture. So I'm going to go ahead, go here, and let's look up jeans texture. Go to images, and I'm going to look for a jeans texture. So I like this one. So I'm going to go with this one. And then I'm just going to right click, save image as. I'm going to save it to the desktop, and I'm just going to call it jeans texture. Okay, so now I have that image right in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Mudbox, and I'm going to import it as a stamp. Okay, add stamp, and go to the desktop, jeans texture, open, and now you're going to see, I'm going to move this over here. Right here is that image I just brought in. So they already have a bunch of these, and these are all really nice. But I'm just going to go ahead and click on that, and then you're going to see now it will use that image as a bump map. Okay? Now, that works okay for some things, but you can see how it's kind of dragging it, and it doesn't look that great. What would be better is to do this instead. So I'm going to, instead of using a stamp, now you can do this. This works better for some things than others. So you can do this randomize thing. And then what it'll do is that it will randomly rotate it and scale it. It'll do all these transforms in order as you brush across. So it makes it look more random. And that works really well. But it's not going to work well for this because jeans have a texture that just kind of runs down, right? Like it's a linear thing. But it would work well, like if I was trying to do like some sort of weird alien skin, I could like do this thing, and it would break it up so it wouldn't be so random. So what we're gonna do is on the stamp here, I'm just gonna turn it off, and I'm gonna use stencil instead. Okay. Now on stencil, do I have anything in here that looks like stencil? Stencil works like this, and I'll show you. So let's say we do this guy here. Okay. What it does is that you now use S. And I can move it with middle, left, and right mouse button. So left mouse button will rotate, middle will move, and right will scale. And then basically you draw through it, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to hit Q to turn it back off. But I'm going to go ahead and bring in my jeans into the stamp. So I'm going to do the same thing. Click on this, add stencil. Go to desktop, go to jeans texture, open, and now it's there. So now I'm going to click on that. And now I have that as a stencil. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it over my pants. Like so. And now I can brush through it. And you can see it keeps its pattern. I'm going to hit Q to turn it off. Right? So it's a little bit strong. And so I'm not a big fan of that. So I'm going to click back on the brush here. I'm going to take my strength down quite a bit. Okay? So it doesn't brush quite as much. And what else do I want to do? So I do that. Let's see, can I make this, will this, oh, it will tile. Okay, so if your texture is seamless, meaning that this part here matches this, and this part here matches this, you can click on use tiles, and that's important because watch what happens. When I brush like this, see how it just ends where the picture ends? But if I, so you want to click on it first so you can see the settings. Like if I click on this, it's going to be the settings for this. Click on this, gives me the settings for this. If I click on use tiles, show tiles. Yeah, we'll show tiles too. If it's tileable, you can actually brush right to the edges. So I'm going to tile it, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to S. Oops, I don't know what happened there. Go back here. I'm going to S. Why are you not? Oh, because Q, S. There it goes. And I'm going to scale this down a little bit because it looked a little bit too big. I'm going to scale it down, and then I'm just going to brush like that. Let's try it again. Make my brush a little bit smaller. I'm going to take the strength down even more. Let's try doing 10%, okay? And I'm just going to brush like this over his jeans. And then I'm going to go over here, and I'm just going to hit Q. So you see I went to an edge, so I'm going to hit Q. And I'm just going to brush that again. And rotate around the back here. Brush again. And then I'm going to hit Q to turn it off. And it's not great, but it does have a texture to it. And you can play around with that. So maybe you find something you really want, and you can, apply that texture. But at least now he's got this kind of cool jeans texture. All right, so we'll put textures. I'm going to go ahead and do another layer, and we're going to put details on it. Now, it is possible, if you remember what I said, the bump map works by black to white. I don't know if I said this earlier, but basically the idea is that black will recede. It'll look like it's going in, and white will come out. So it is possible to just manually brush that. So I'm just going to go over here and make sure I turn stencil back off. So now I'm just using my brush as it is. And now what I can do is with my color here, if I do, let's say, a lighter gray, brush a little bit smaller, I can brush, well, maybe make it a brighter. The brighter it is, the stronger it's going to be. So I'm going to brush like this, and it'll basically add to the bump map. And then watch, if I go dark, it will look like it's going inwards as opposed to outwards. And you can see I kind of pushed it to make it look like there's a pocket there. And I can kind of do the same thing here too. So I'm just going to make this even smaller just to make it look like a seam. I'm going to click here. And then I'll do a white. And that will make it look like it comes out. And now it looks really weird. So let's not do that. But, I could do things where like maybe I want to put a seam down here. I could do black. And then maybe on my fall off, just do the really tight one. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And I could draw basically this seam down his side. Oops, Control Z, I thought I was holding Alt. And see, now it looks like there's that seam there, and I could do the inside as well too. And that's all just by doing that bump, and it looks like that. And I could do it to the shirt as well. So maybe I want to make it look like there's a seam on the shirt. Like that. It's pretty neat, right? So, and you could do all, I could put wrinkles and what have you, right? So, or like, let's say you want to just give the character a mole, right? So I could do that, and let's just do, let's say this one, and I can go, he's got a mole, right? That looks weird, but basically you can paint details on if you need to as well, if you would like to do that. All right, so yeah, like maybe you want to give his knees like wrinkles or something. So again, I'll just use this thing, and I could kind of cut in, and then if I hold Shift, it's smooth. That doesn't work very well, but and then if you don't like it, I didn't show you this before, but you can erase anything because these are on layers. So I could just go like this and erase out that bump map. So if you look up here, you see how I kind of went over? I'm just going to use that eraser. Oh, that's not, I got to make sure I'm on the details layer. And I can erase that off of where I messed up. Because, again, these are just layers. So I can turn this layer on and off. If I don't like it or like it, I can throw it away with the trash can. So what I want you to do is just, you should have gotten a good idea of basically how it works now at this point. I know I made one longer video, but I think, it's, where we're at, like 40 minutes. So I think that's not too bad. But I want you to kind of explore it and play around with it, see what you get. Okay. So I'm going to call this one done. But like even here, like I could, actually paint wrinkles using, this stuff here. Oops. Here, I'm on eraser too. I could paint it to look like wrinkles here if I wanted to try and like give him shirt wrinkles and stuff. Right, you can kind of see the subtlety of some of the wrinkles. Anyway, so I'm gonna call it quits here because I could spend all day just playing around with it. So once you're happy with it, what we need to do is we need to export out our texture maps. Okay. So so I would continue playing around with it if you want to. You could have lots of fun, do all sorts of things. but I need to export out. So I need to export out these 3 maps, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna right click over top of diffuse, and then I'm just gonna go export channel merged. Export channel merged. And then what I want you to do is just save it right to your Maya project folder, right? So here's my Maya project folder. You're just gonna go right to source images and just call it CAR underscore color, okay? So that'll be my character color. And then over top, you want to make sure you're on this, the whole channel. Don't export one of the, if you only export one layer, you're only going to get that one subtle color. I want the whole thing. So you got to right click on this and then export channel merged. And then specular, right click, export channel merged. And again, it's going to be care. And then we'll just do specular. Okay. And then right click on bump. Oops. Come on, baby, you can do it. Wow. Jeez. It's just, look at, it's not, maybe I just make sure I'm in here. I think it's this, my camera thing. Move out of the way. Come on. There we go. Yeah, I think it's competing with this. This has got to go over more. Come on. All right, let's see if that works now, right? That's what it was. Yeah, see, it's competing with the camera. Export channel merged on the bump, and then we'll just do the same thing again. We're going to call it car bump. Okay, and then you're going to end up with 3 texture maps. So if I were to go to my thing here, you will see, so if I go to the project folder, and if we go to source images, you'll see that now I have these 3 images that then I can bring into Maya, okay? So the last thing I want to do before we get out of here is I'm just going to go ahead and do File, Save Scene As, and save this also in your Scenes folder, and save it as just like Care Mudbox, right? So Car Mudbox for Character Mudbox, and then save it, okay? And once that's saved, go ahead and close out of this guy, open Maya back up, and now what we can do is actually apply it to him. So one thing you might notice right off the bat is that if you look, see how this is all hard, and then this is what we call soft? You can't see the edges here, but you can see the edges here. These are what we call hard edges, and these are called soft edges. I'm just going to grab the whole guy and just make it all soft. So with him selected, make sure you're in the modeling tool set here, menu set, and then just go to mesh display and just do soften edge, and that will just soften it all. Okay, so it's just easier that way. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a unique material for him and apply those materials. So I'm going to have, I'm going to open up the Hypershape by hitting this little ball here. You can also go to Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade, and we're going to make a new material, and I'm going to make a blend. So click on that, rename the blend, care underscore MAT. So for character material. And now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and move this over here. I want to apply this to this guy. So we can do it a couple ways. Let's just middle mouse button, hold down, and then let go. Or you can have him selected and then right click over top of it and assign material to selection. And there's other ways too. You can right click over top of him and go assign existing material. There's like a million ways. Okay, so just one of those 2 will be fine. All right, so you can see now it did change him because now he's a little bit shiny. Before he had this Lambert on. Okay, so good. Now he's in there. He's all good. So select that material again. And what we need to do is before we could go here and I can make it red, right? Or I could do different colors. What I want to do though is instead of just making it a whole color, I want to attach a texture map. That's what these little textures, these little checkers mean, is that they mean that you can attach a map to it. So in this case, I want to attach a texture. So I'm going to click on this. It's going to give me an option. So most of these are what we call procedurals, which means that they will, through math, generate a repeating image. The one we want actually is File. So I'm going to click on File, hit the folder, and then, again, I didn't set my Maya project folder up. I should have done that, but I didn't. So yours should go right to the source images of your project folder, and so you'll see it right in there, but I'm going to have to navigate because I'm a bad person. So I'm just going to go source images, and then I'm doing color. So I'm going to select color and hit open. And then you're going to see right over here, as long as you put texturing on, which is this little thing here, this little ball, okay? All right, so there's that. And I'm going to click back on the material again. And so I did the color. Now what I need is my specular color. I'm trying to get this. Yeah. See, now this is in the way again. Go over there. Okay. So you see specular color. So this will just generally change it. If I go black, it makes it not shiny. And then all the way makes it shiny. You can see a preview up here. But instead, I'm going to attach that texture map. So I'll click on this. File. Please say it goes to the right spot this time. We're just going to keep. Yes. Okay. I'm going to select the specular. Okay. So now that's attached. I'm going to click back on the material. And the last one to do is this bump map. So you're going to click on this. Again, file. Make sure it says bump. And bump depth is currently at 1. We might need to change that number afterwards. But where it says bump value, you'll see this little arrow. That means there's something attached to it. And that's the thing we need to get to. So you're going to click on this. And then right here, we can click on that. And then actually apply that. And open. Okay. And then if we look over here, you should see your guy in all of his glory. Okay. Now, if your bump map is too bumpy, like this looks fine to me, but if it was like I want it to be down a little bit, or maybe it's not enough, what you can do is click on this guy, okay, and then if you click this right here, this will show all the nodes that are attached to this, that are coming into it and out of that material. Basically, this is a graph editor. So you'll see here's the image that was getting attached. It's running through this filter, this bump 2D filter that turns it into the thing that makes it bumpy. Because obviously it's just a picture, right? This is doing the heavy lifting. This is the thing that's making it do that. So that's converting it. So you want to select this, and then you can adjust the depth here. So for instance, I could make this 10, and then you're gonna see it's a whole lot, right? But if I go like 0.1, it's very subtle. See how you can barely see it now? So before it was at 1, and maybe I will go a little bit lower. Let's do 0.5, right? So just a little bit weaker. So you might want to adjust that bump depth by grabbing this node here. So you can see there's the bump, this, and then it's going into the materials bump thing. So what we just did is what this is showing. We had these pictures, and we're now attaching these pictures into these different channels of this material. I know it's kind of complicated, but trust me, it gets easier. You'll eventually pick it up. Okay. So that's good. Now, again, yours might look like this, and you're like, oh, it doesn't look right. The reason why is because you have it in this mode, which is just flat shading. So that's 5. 4 is wireframe. 5 is flat shade. 6 is textures. 7 is lighting. I don't know what 8 is, but so just make sure you have 6. If you hit 6, you should see a preview of your stuff. Now, occasionally I've had this happen too, where on the shading, it'll say use default material. Make sure that's not checked on, because that will override it, which is honestly really stupid and annoying. So just make sure that's off, because I've run into that problem. And then you'll see you have your textured character. And then when you're done, you can just go ahead and Control-Shift-S or File Save As. And I'm just going to save this as Numero Nuevo. All right. Yeah, and now we have our textured guy, and he's ready to go. So you can see he looks a lot better with color, right? I mean, he still looks like junk, but he's a bit better. Yeah, so play around with it. Particularly try to play around with Mudbox and do all sorts of things. When you are done, what I want you to do is give me the whole Maya project folder. So I'm going to close out of this. Again, I'll just hit save just because I feel weird about it. Okay, any minute now. And then just take that folder. So it's inside here. You can see Cone Film. That's got all of got my Maya scenes in it, right? It's got if you go to source images, it's got the pictures that we put in there. You might even want to double check to make sure they're all in there, okay? Also in scenes is my Maya to Mudbox file and my Mudbox file, okay? So I want you to take that and then just right click, send to, compress zip folder, and then you're going to give me the zip folder. Do not give me just the Maya binary file, because the Maya binary, and by that I mean, let me delete this. By that I mean the scenes file, like the file that you open up that you're in Maya, because that only contains the model. So if you send that to me, like if that's what you submit, it's literally just going to be the thing I gave you. So it tells me nothing. There's no textures applied to it. It might have a link that says there's supposed to be a texture, but the image wasn't sent to me, so I don't see it. Okay, so I need the entire project folder, and in order to submit it on Blackboard, it has to be a zip file because it only accepts files, not folders. So that's why you have to compress it, send it to me, and then you should be good to go. All right, but try to play around with it. It's really, I think it's pretty fun. It's relatively intuitive because it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. So if you do run into any issues, let me know. Good luck.